in 2003. The British handover of Hong Kong to China in 1997 saw a huge wave of Chinese migration to Australia. Almost 100,000 Hong Kong Chinese fled the colony, fearful of the future under Chinese rule. They formed a unique group of mostly middle-class and highly educated migrants who settled here. But a decade on, almost 40,000 have returned home, and many more are expected to follow as the lure of China's boom-time economy and a reinvigorated Hong Kong prove too hard to resist. Deborah Cornwall has been looking at what's behind this unprecedented reverse migration.
Going back, I feel like an expat, but actually I'm not. I'm most like going home. Is that duality that makes us quite a hybrid, I guess.
Passport, ticket.
Graphic designer Dudu Sin was still a schoolgirl when she arrived in Sydney with her family, driven by fears about their future under communist rule.
At first I just think, oh, Australia's so boring and nothing happens. But as you grow older, you make new friends and you have new interests, so you just sort of fall in love with it.
In all, more than 100,000 Hong Kong Chinese became Australian citizens in the late 80s and early 90s. Dubbed astronaut migrants, a lack of job opportunities meant many families were forced to live split lives. The husbands shuttling between the two countries for work, while the children settled into schools, and wives negotiated life in the suburbs.
On the whole, it was a very worrying experience. The males would keep flying backwards and forwards between Hong Kong and Australia to have some sort of family life, and also to give moral support to the wife and say, I haven't forgotten you, I haven't taken up a mistress in Hong Kong.
But 2 decades on, China's economy is booming. And for young Hong Kong Australians like Dudu Sin, the lure of the motherland has proved irresistible.
I think I have a lot of friends that has gone back, and a lot of them has actually settled down and, found work and found relationships, and it's tempting when you see them doing well.
In many respects, a lot of people feel a call to return home, if you like. And that has been brought about by China's emergence as the dominant economic factor. And you'd be crazy not to think about it.
At last count, 4 out of every 10 Hong Kong Chinese migrants who arrived here after the 1997 handover have returned home, with many more expected to follow.
I cannot remember a single student from Hong Kong that I have taught here in the past 15 years staying on in Australia. And working here. And some of the bright young ones back to Hong Kong, they are now earning 3-4 times more than I'm earning now. So why should they stay on here?
It's an unprecedented reverse migration. But demographers say the high education levels of Hong Kong migrants have allowed them to move between countries and cultures with relative ease.
Australia's migration has really massively changed in the last decade or so. The world today is a war of transnationalism, that is that people identify with more than one country. And what is going to happen is we're going to have much more coming and going between countries and much less of the permanent settlement type.
But for most Hong Kong Chinese who've made their life here, leaving Australia isn't an easy decision.
Many of them will be in 2 minds whether they're doing the right thing. Because the reality is they've gone to school here, they've got their friends here, this is where their social networks still are, and they're going back to a place where, all their networks are probably out of date. Hong Kong is very transient these days, people would have left, so they actually run the risk of going back and having to start again when they've basically got great lives here. Hi Zoe, here you go.
A senior Labor Party strategist, Eamon Fitzpatrick's mother and brother have already returned to Hong Kong. But after carving out a career here, and with 3 young children and an Australian wife, he's in no rush to go back.
I think that's one of the great things about Australia, which doesn't exist in too many places anymore. That is, if you're prepared to give it a go, people are prepared to give you a go. As corny as it sounds, I think that's very, very true. And that's, I think, one of the fantastic things about living here. It was, I turned up, didn't know anybody, got given a range of opportunity, and I was allowed to very much make a life for myself here.
It's too heavy.
But it's not always about better jobs. There's also family obligations.
Over 25 all the time.
I think my parents do have expectation of me getting married, preferably before 30, because there's like a saying in Chinese culture, especially Hong Kong culture, is, if you're not married, you sort of the rotten mandarin in the bottom of the barrel, and I don't want that.
That is not really true, because I just want to do to expand the friendship, the network, because I realized due to in here, like on weekend, she's very lonely. Maybe all the best friends is back to Hong Kong already.
But
你返嚟會有男朋友啦?
I'm very embarrassed right now.
Embarrassed? No, not really.
Leaving today, it's really hard because my formative years are here, my lifestyle is here, my car is here, my girlfriends are here, and weather's so beautiful. Oh, stop it! What am I gonna do?
Hong Kong migrants have been the pioneers in a global phenomenon, the rise of the big-earning, highly mobile transnational. But as Dudu Sin joins the exodus abroad, in many ways she's no different from the growing army of young Australian professionals of her generation. Deborah Cornwall, Lakeline.
And congratulations to our regular host, Tony Jones, for winning the Best Broadcast Interview category at tonight's Walkley Awards. The Australian newspaper's Hedley Thomas won the Gold Walkley for his reporting on the Muhammad Hanif saga. Now for a quick